Good afternoon, Gene, Laurel, Steve, and Tom. Just see how our numbers build here in the next few minutes. And we'll do some introductions. Good afternoon. I'm just gonna give it another couple minutes before we get started. So I know there's going to be some other people joining us here. Okay, Chris, thank you. I see you've made me the host. Thank you. Okay. Well, it's 4:04, and I know there'll be some other people joining us, but in the interest of everyone's time here, I think maybe we should get started with some introductions, and then as others come on, we can try and introduce them. And so, thanks everyone who's here presently for joining us in the August 31st meeting of the Mass Broadband Coalition. We are going to have some special guests today, and I see one of them just joined us here, Josh Eichen from Mass Broadband Institute. We have also some folks from the Cape Cod Collaborative Council. I'm sorry, Cape Cod Technology Council. My apology on that. And we are going to I believe, have someone joining us, Shane Blundell from the Attorney General's office, and I think Emily Torres Cullinane, I think, just joined the meeting right now from the AG's office. So what I'd like to do is maybe just go do a quick round of introductions for everyone who's here presently. I'm Bob Espandola. I am a select board member in the town of Fairhaven, and I've been working with the Broadband Study Committee in Fairhaven for several years now. And I'll just go in order of how I see them on the screen here. Chris McClure. Want to just introduce yourself, Chris?
Hey, Bob, thanks. Yeah, this is Chris McClure. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the City of Watertown.
He may have, okay, he made me the host. Are you there, Chris?
Can you hear me?
Okay, we'll just move on. Emily Torres Cullinane, if you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emily
I
Torres.
think you're muted, Emily.
Oh.
No, Emily, we can hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Good afternoon, Emily Torres Cullinane. I am the Chief of Community Engagement at the Attorney General's
I think you're still muted, and my apologies. I think,
No,
can anyone else hear?
Bob?
Emily?
We hear her, Bob.
Bob, can you hear us?
That's a good point.
I can hear Emily.
Yeah, I thought it was me, but I guess it might be Bob.
Oh, you know what? I think it was on my end. I am sorry. Everyone else is hearing you. If you could try again, please.
Yeah,
Can you hear me
Bob?
now?
I can. I'm
Okay.
I can.
No problem. We're used to this, right?
Yeah.
So Bob, very nice to meet you. Emily Torres Cullinane. I'm the Chief of Community Engagement at the Attorney General's office, and I see some familiar folks on the line. Nice to see you all.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. And Jean Curry?
Well, my name is Gene Curry. I chair the Infrastructure Committee for the Cape Cod Technology Council. We've been looking at broadband issues going back to the late 90s. I also chair the Tech Council has a project called the Broadband Resource Project, and I chair that as well. From by way of background, as far as we're thinking about competitive issues in the industry, I started my career at the Federal Trade Commission doing antitrust enforcement.
Oh, interesting. Thank you. All right. And Carl Allen, I just want to recognize Carl as someone who helped us, be able to get the Attorney General's office representatives on the call with us tonight. So thank you for that, Carl, but go ahead.
No worries. When I can, I'm glad to help. Carl Allen, City of Chelsea. I'm a planner in the Department of Housing and Community Development, and digital equity is part of my remit.
Thank you, Carl. And Heidi Mahoney.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
My video doesn't seem to be working, but Heidi Mahoney, I am with Go Next Speed. I am the Manager of Government Affairs, and I am just here to listen in.
Okay, thank you. And just for people who are new to this meeting, who haven't been here in the past, Heidi did present to us in a prior meeting two bills that are in front of the House and Senate regarding pole attachment, and they're aimed at trying to expedite that process. So maybe we'll have a chance to touch base on that again a little later on the call. So Jonathan
Absolutely.
Nunes. Jonathan Nunes. I'm not sure if you're hearing me, Jonathan. I'll skip back to you. I'll come right back to you. We have Laurel Pepin.
Hi, I'm Laurel Pepin with Surtex Surtex Broadband Solutions. We're a resource for design, build, and operating fiber optic networks in the Northeast.
Okay, thank you. And Peter Chase.
Yeah, Peter Chase from town of Dartmouth, staff member, also member of the Broadband Study Committee in the town.
Thank you, Peter. And Josh Eichen. Why don't I circle back to you, Josh, and we're gonna let you do a brief presentation for us and have question and answer. So I'll come right back to you. And Shane Blundell from the AG.
Hi, Bob. Hi, everyone. A colleague of Emily's here in the Attorney General's office. Official title, Deputy Chief of our Policy and Government Affairs Division. Appreciate the invite to join you all today.
Thank you. And did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And let's see. So I'm seeing R. Pierce. If you could introduce yourself, I'm not sure who, that's a new member here, R. Pierce.
Well, relatively new. I was at the last meeting. It's Rick Pierce from Somerset.
Oh, yes, Rick.
Circuit Commissioner representing the selectmen.
Yes, I apologize. I didn't recognize the name shortened on there. Okay, great. Thank you. And Steve Smith.
Hi, I'm Steve Smith. I am the Executive Director, a paid employee of the Cape Cod Technology Council.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Tom Newton.
Hi, everyone. Tom Newton, current chairman of the Broadband Advisory Committee in the town of Wilbraham.
Okay, great. Thank you. And now back to Josh Eichen. Go ahead, Josh.
Hi, everyone. Great to be back in this group. Josh Eichen, Program Manager of Partnerships here at the Mass Broadband Institute. Thanks, Bob, for letting me steal a little bit of agenda time here today. I really appreciate it. And good to see everybody. So I asked Bob to steal just a few minutes on the agenda in a totally selfish, opportunistic sort of perspective to promote our upcoming regional listening sessions that we were doing as part of the statewide digital equity plan. And I'm going to tell you why they're really important and why I really hope to see, folks that are on the call here at those sessions. And then I'm also happy to talk more about some of our ongoing planning and grant program development activities. I think last time I was here, we got into a bit of a conversation around BEAD, and I'm happy to give an update just sort of like on where we are, seeing sort of the cards lay out in terms of timeline and process around that particular funding source, as well as I can start to download a little bit more information to you all on some of the things that I think are going to be important for different communities and community members to be aware of as those different programs start to really sort of sum up. So
okay.
My pitch is, I think as everyone on the call knows, or most people on the call know, Mass Broadband Institute is the state broadband agency. We are responsible for overseeing the two large federal grant programs related to broadband digital equity, the Digital Equity Act and the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program. Under both of those federal funding streams, we are required to produce a statewide plan. So we are producing not one, but two statewide plans, one for each program. They will ultimately end up being a kind of cohesive document that will end up guiding what will be upwards of $300 million, I mean, really more than $400 million, all said and done, of federal investment, both programmatic and infrastructure investments. One of the cornerstones of the both planning processes is stakeholder engagement. And I'm so glad to see my former colleague, Emily Torres-Cullinane, on the call here, who led community engagement division at our former employer, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, because Emily knows how important this is. We are taking this very seriously. We really feel like, being able to hear from communities, from individuals, from residents, from organizations to inform how we are structuring and implementing our grant programs is critical. And so we have been spinning our wheels all summer, getting ready for this month where we are hitting the road on a statewide listening tour, where we are going to be going to 7 regions of the state to do a listening session. Our first stop is Brockton. It is on September 7th. Brockton is our Southeast regional location. So I know there's a lot of Southeast folks here today. So I thought I saw New Bedford on here. Where did the guy from New Bedford go? I think maybe he dropped.
Peter, no, he's here. Peter Chase is.
Chase,
New Bedford, Jonathan Nunes is from New Bedford.
Okay, awesome. So Jonathan, and Peter from Dartmouth, we would love to see, New Bedford and Dartmouth representation in Brockton. We have there's a virtual option for attendance. We're also going to be having satellite listening sessions in libraries in Plymouth and in Dartmouth. I will send around the full like information suite after this call to Bob to sort of send out to the full group here. But these sessions are going to be really important because it's really where, I mean, in addition to listening sessions, we're going to be doing focus groups and surveys, but these listening sessions are critical opportunities as like an all-comers, you know, open forum to, you know, really have honest discussions about what's going on in terms of broadband and digital equity. At these listening sessions, we're also going to be presenting some of our, you know, first round data analysis on the state of broadband and digital equity in the Commonwealth in a way that has not been presented in the past. So including really diving into the unserved and underserved locations, as well as affordability and availability gaps across the state. So we're really excited to like roll all that like amazing data out for you all and the community, and really hope that you all can attend and then you can promote the events to your networks, and help us make sure that we are getting the right, you know, input and information from community across the state. So as I mentioned, the first listening session is on September 7th at the Brockton Boys and Girls Club. I'll post in the chat here the full details, and I'll send around all the information post meeting. We're then going to Pittsfield on I think that will be September 13th, and then Holyoke on September 14th. And then we have subsequent meetings in Boston, Lowell, and the Cape that are scheduled right now. And I will send around the full sort of suite of dates and locations for all of those events and meetings. So I appreciate, you know, again, anything that y'all can do to help us get the word out, we would be greatly appreciative.
Okay, thanks a lot for that. And Westport down here usually attends our meetings. I think they've been every meeting we've had so far. We've had at least one person from Westport, but not yet today. So, but I'm sure we'll get the word over to them.
No worries.
And so what I thought might be helpful here is, you know, we wanted to take this opportunity with the members of the AG's office here to talk about some of the issues that members have brought up in the past. But I think it might be helpful to, Heidi, if you don't mind just giving a high-level overview of what we've talked about in the past with the poll attachment bills, and just, you know, so that to make sure that, you know, it's understood conceptually what is in mind there, because I think that from what I've read, in some cases, this is considered one of the hurdles that have, you know, communities have faced, and making things less competitive, you know. So if you don't mind just giving a quick overview and maybe let the, you know, Emily and Shane listen in on that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I don't mind at all. So there's a bill in front of legislation right now. It is to support One Touch Make Ready in Massachusetts. So which of all of the New England states, the Commonwealth is the only state that hasn't adopted One Touch Make Ready. We're finding that in other states, we're able to deploy competitive internet services in the span of a year, whereas in Massachusetts, we're delayed by 2 to 3, and in some cases 4 years to get our attachments on the utility poles. I can send, I wonder if am I able to attach something to the chat, because I will put something in the chat as well. It's not just a GoNet Speed bill. It's certainly a bill that is for all internet service providers, and we are supporting it and encouraging people to write in on One Touch Make Ready. And I'm happy to go through again what that means. I'm guessing the guests here today know what that means, so I won't bore you with those details. But I will put a flyer in or some information in the chat so that people can look at it. We also have generated some template letters that people can send to the committee who's making these decisions in support of that bill, if people are interested as well.
Okay, thank you. And you know, from so in the past meeting, we probably had a little more attendance in that meeting, but we had a number of people that expressed interest in supporting that effort and, from this group. But it is a question for you, Emily and Shane, is aside from, advocating for, a bill like that to be passed, is there anything else that we should know about, opportunities for our group to get behind any other advocacy form that would is there anything beyond these bills that the AG or could be involved in that would help that process?
We do, one of my responsibilities, we wear many hats here. I'm sure those of us, all you in government, can appreciate. So we do review legislation that's filed. I'm not familiar with this bill, but I guess if there's legislation, we're always happy to take a look and review it. Hide these strategy seems like a sensible one. Making people aware of the issue and presenting legislation as an opportunity to address the problem that you're seeing. So
I just put a flyer in the chat that sort of goes through what One Touch Make Ready, and then a sample of a template support letter that people could use or not use. But both will give more detailed description of One Touch Make Ready and sort of what we're trying to accomplish in Massachusetts that we're able to get done in other states.
Has it had a hearing yet?
Yes, sir. We did testify. There were no, there was nobody testifying in opposition, which was surprising. I can also put our testimony in here too, if you'd like to see that.
Sure. Okay, happy to take a look.
Sure. I guess one question I would throw out is not on future rights, but are there existing rights? I know is part of the grant to utility companies to put poles in city streets back at the turn of the previous century. The city reserved a right to attach hardwired network for fire alarms. And our city solicitor couldn't find any text of what that grant actually looked like. And so it's unclear if it's worded broadly enough that it allows the city to attach things that aren't fire hardline wires, but might be fiber that is used to replace those wires. So I don't know if AG's office could help us out in that kind of research.
I'm not quite sure I understand. We're not, we're not a regulatory body. So I don't know if we're the appropriate place for that question, but if I did
okay, is that something the PUC would weigh in on?
What's the acronym?
PUC, Public Utility Commission?
I don't recognize that agency name. But if you want to, I dropped some of my information in the chat. So if you do want to, not taking the time away from the group, but if you want to email me separately, happy to help problem solve and think through the issue that you're seeing.
Thanks.
Real quick, this is Chris in Watertown. I've used that space for dark fiber in multiple communities. If you want to reach out to me offline too, I can fill you in a little bit.
Thank you, Chris.
Bob, I think you're trying to speak, but you might be muted again. I'm not sure what's going on with your audio there.
Can you hear me now? Oh, okay, thank you. So when this group was first formed, we got together just to, mainly to be a way for communities who are, looking into digital equity issues and building out broadband in our communities, to, share what we're doing with each other and try to learn from each other's experiences. And but one of the, very common threads that was running through all of our early meetings was about how frustrated people were with lack of competition in our communities when it became to internet service providers. And, there was even a suggestion by one member early on that that there's an intentional, I don't want to start a conspiracy theory or anything here, but a collusion where internet service providers would decide that, hey, I'm going to take this community and you take that community, and we'll just kind of, that will basically have a monopoly in each one of those individual markets. And, not to say that that's actually going on, but in reality, many of the communities are served by a single, provider. And one of the analogies that's been used in a number of us have heard from a consultant in this area is when they use an analogy of a highway system where every say trucking company would have to have their own highway to deliver on between interstates and so on. You'd build their own infrastructure and be able to use their own highway to get to and from. And essentially, this is what happens in communities. If someone builds any kind of a network in a community and another internet service provider wants to come on to that and compete, they have a difficult time competing in that community because the infrastructure costs are prohibitive. However, in a broadband environment with fiber deployed throughout communities, it would be easy for multiple service providers to provide service to all the same households and business community through that single network. And so that aspect alone has been described as something that causes this monopolistic environment that we're in. And one of the things that I read, interestingly enough, recently was a concept where there could be a requirement that incumbents lease back their existing infrastructure to communities. Obviously, there'd be some kind of fee structure involved with that, but to allow for others to use that same infrastructure rather than building, multiple redundant sets of infrastructure. So, that's something that I'm curious if that is something that's possible, how that would, if this group was to want to advocate for something like that, recognizing it's a very, very big concept that we're talking about here. Does that even sound conceivable to the AG's office, that there's an avenue for pursuing that?
Is this like a legislative change or who? I guess
Yeah.
sort of. I guess I'm new to these issues. You folks obviously spend a lot of time on it. So I think is it a sort of a legislative solution, or is it a sort of a rulemaking, or sort of what is the sort of, you sort of identify the sort of the general policy, but sort of what is the sort of the vehicle that you're envisioning to address this problem that you've presented?
Right. And I am not, someone who's, well-versed enough to understand that aspect of it, how it would happen. Maybe someone, I don't know, Jean Curry, can I put you on the spot to ask you if you have any, thoughts on that? Or any knowledge of how that could possibly happen? I think you're still muted. Can't hear you yet. All right, apparently not there. So yeah, yes.
Oh,
I'm
here
not-
it is. I
there
just
we
was
go.
having trouble unmuting.
Okay, here we go. Thank you.
So it's a complicated issue. Putting aside whether or not there's some sort of market allocation going on among the providers. You do have I've served on the Bourne Cable Advisory Committee, and the question, I'm not currently, but formerly, and the question comes up when the towns, because I'm going to step back, and if I'm oversimplifying, or let me know, but each town licenses its cable to a large degree. The cable companies provide they license the technology, the access, and you have a committee that does that. And when you try and find another provider to come in because of the cost of infrastructure or what have you, it's difficult to do. So there has been discussion among people about trying to treat it more like traditional views of public utilities. But I think it's kind of a big ask, which is why we've been looking at more of the helping municipalities try, if a municipality wants to develop its own broadband, to generate some competition with the incumbents. That's more what we've been looking at rather than that sort of regulatory solution. I'm not sure you'd find the appetite for it, whether it was through the legislature or through the AG's office or some regulatory vehicle. But the problem you have is in most communities, there is only one provider for broadband. And, it's textbook antitrust, literally textbook, that in a monopoly situation, you have higher prices and less innovation.
Yes, and I think that's exactly what, communities around us down here in Fairhaven and in Fairhaven that we've talked about is, the way our solution to it would be to build a network of our own, invite internet service providers on to compete on that network. However, for a community with a population of about 16,000, we'd be talking about a project that would cost $20 to $30 million. So if every community needs to invest that type of money to be able to get over this hurdle, it's really going to be unlikely to happen in large scale, which is why I'm mentioning this other concept is just to see if there's a way, because it does effectively we believe, I think most of the communities that have joined our calls, that this appears to be monopolistic, when in reality, there is no competition because of the existing infrastructure and the hurdle of a newcomer coming in and trying to overcome that barrier. So that's why the talk about antitrust is does it apply?
And we on the Cape have a somewhat different situation than perhaps other communities, because we do have Open Cape, which is a middle mile provider. And Open Cape, I believe, and Steve used to work at Open Cape, so he can weigh in on that. But I believe Open Cape has, at least for its middle mile, offered to share its network with some of the incumbent providers. And as far as I know, none of them have taken it up on that. So the concept is there, and the concept could be viable. The question is, what is the vehicle for imposing it on the incumbents?
Okay, that's an interesting concept there. So for people that are not familiar, the Open Cape was maybe Steve, if you could just explain how Open Cape came to be and what the network looks like right now that they operate.
Sure, Gene is actually probably better, but yeah, I'll weigh in on some of the specifics. So, Open Cape was founded with a BTOP grant during the Obama administration, and it was exactly as Gene indicated. It was designed to be an open source, open access middle mile network. It was partially funded by the federal government. Mostly, the largest chunk of money was from the federal government. There was some state money and some private money also invested in it. And the concept at the time was so the federal and state entities would construct the middle mile, and then the municipalities would do the last mile piece. And I'm not positive on this, Gene, you might know. I believe Open Cape, part of Open Cape's charter is that it is required to be open source. They have to allow access from, I mean, obviously for a fee, but to anybody who wants access to it. And that's the way it's set up. And so that's kind of a high level quick. I don't want to take too much. I mean, I get on a soapbox. I can go on for an hour and yeah.
Yeah, so I assure you. One thing that's relevant is that also Open Cape is a nonprofit as compared to the incumbent providers.
Right, and that middle mile versus the last mile, definition, essentially it's, bringing the service from the local area through to the hubs in in our area, it would be Boston and Providence, for example.
Yep.
Right, and that cost is of that is built into your basic internet fee that you pay each month from the incumbents. They have to provide that, and so that's one component of it.
And Bob, also, although its original design was as a middle mile network, it is doing some work to develop last mile networks in Falmouth. And as a matter of fact, if I wasn't here, there's an announcement they're deploying in Buzzards Bay to serve about 100 businesses on the Main Street area of Buzzards Bay, literally this evening.
Oh, okay.
So,
right. And so if they back to that middle mile piece, you suggested that Open Cape made it available to, and this does run right straight through our area in southeastern Massachusetts too. Several of the communities on the call, it runs through New Bedford and Fairhaven, Mattapoisett, who's been on our calls in the past, and straight down, I think, the Route 6 corridor and runs all the way through out to Western Mass. So could pick up quite a bit of the South Coast. And if this nonprofit, has made this available to the incumbents and they have not taken advantage of it, let's just say, for lack of better words, then there's some costs that could have been passed on to consumers if they had done that. I'm not sure if that basically would have been, if you the idea there, then again, maybe that's an avenue that is a little more specific, that deals with, are these incumbent providers purposely avoiding something that would be, savings passed along to consumers for their own personal interest,
Well, you're getting into, so you get into the issue of, owned versus leased, and most incumbent providers want the control that's available to them by running and managing their own networks. I mean, if Comcast or Verizon utilized Open Cape, there's another layer of management access in there that they just don't. It's not as efficacious in their minds. I think that's, again, I don't pretend to be in their heads, but that's typically what you run into. And then there is another, and I don't want to get down too much into the weeds here, but there's an advantage to having more than one provider, because for a bank or a hospital or public safety, it's very important often to have redundancy, including path diversity and things like that. And I know Open Cape was built partly purposefully to be route diverse from Comcast. It's not 100% route diverse, but there's a lot of benefit to that, and both to public entities and commercial businesses. Many commercial businesses subscribe to both in order to, if there's a cut on one, they're not down hard. So.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that would apply more, I would think, in the commercial and public,
Well, hospitals and public safety, it's really
Yes.
important too, Bob. And actually, that's another point. Open Cape was actually founded primarily as a public safety vehicle. It was the lack of access to broadband by the police and fire departments that really kind of drove the development of that network.
Okay, thank you. So being mindful of time, I know that Shane had indicated he wouldn't be able to stay with us all that long, beyond, I mean, it's already been 40 minutes, so thank you for your time there. And Emily, I'm not sure what your time frame is, but I'm wondering if there's, from what you've heard, is anything that you'd like to comment on? You'd like to, and I know you were mostly supposed to be just here listening, and we've kind of thrown a couple questions your way, so I apologize for that, actually. But if we, the competition, lack of competition being that the primary concern for us, we're just wondering again, if there's a way that we could find out about how this group and our groups together, including the Cape Cod Technology Council, can advocate for some movement here to try and make things more competitive. If we're just looking for where to do the right research, and if there's anything perhaps in other parts of the country where other attorney general's offices have fielded things like this. I know when Heidi mentioned the make ready process, and when I went online looking at some of the antitrust things, I saw, for example, that Tennessee Valley Authority had similar concerns about pole attachment and how things were being handled down there. And so some of these issues, travel, they're across the country, common issues with concerns, but of lack of competition and some of the hurdles that are in place that may be preventing things from developing. And maybe it's in that area, like, if when Open Cape or others try to do something and they're seeing resistance along the way from the incumbents, maybe there's a way to require that that's not allowed, so to speak, that they're if it's in the best interest of the consumers. And that's, I don't know if that makes any sense at all.
So it sounds like there are maybe two issues. The one, I think what Heidi talked about is sort of the lack of access and the time it takes to build out your own infrastructure, to build your own highway. And then the second one is sort of when there is a provider, there's only one, and it's very challenging, to sort of convince others to join. And so there's a concern about either sort of first lack of access completely to broadband, or second, there is access, but it's maybe an incumbent provider will feel like without competition, consumers are paying more. Is that sort of?
Yes, that is from my perspective. Anybody else, feel free to chime in if you think, Carl?
So I think kind of the history of the problem is, in many cases, this is a follow-on to the cable franchise, that no municipality in the Commonwealth really ever authorized any of these companies to be their broadband provider. With the case of 9X, New England Telephone, Verizon, that was an agreement to provide phone service. Slowly, once the internet happened, they started figuring out that they could provide DSL service over existing copper phone lines. And so they started doing that. They then owned the poles because they had the franchise to stick them in. And in cases where they had a wealthy customer base, they upgraded that infrastructure. Where they had a poor customer base, they said, not our problem. And the flip side was the cable franchises, which took the lower section of all of those poles and ran coax. And then after pushing cable out, they discovered that they could also provide internet service over those lines and started doing that. So we're stuck with this legacy infrastructure that by and large was never built for purpose and is not providing what the residents of the Commonwealth need. So just
thank you. So, we do have attorneys that work on antitrust issues. I think you said Gene said you were at the FTC before. If there's a more sort of concrete, sort of written explanation, I certainly would. If there's something you want to send me via email, I certainly would be able to convey that to, again, the attorneys in our office who work on antitrust issues. I don't have any personal sort of experience or wisdom around antitrust issues, but we have folks in the office that do. So if you'd like to send me some more information, again, my email's in the chat. I'm certainly willing to share that information with them and sort of try to assess, for example, if there's efforts here or in other states. I don't think it has to be any specific form, but just something in writing that, again, I'm able to convey to the team for them to take a look.
That's very fair, and thank you for that opportunity to allow us to do that, and we'll, I will, after this meeting ends, coordinate with whoever on the call is interested right now, and perhaps some of the others who have joined us in the past that couldn't make this meeting will be interested in weighing in. So we'll try to get something over to you, and hopefully it'll be succinct enough to to make sense to who you pass it on to. But so yeah.
I would just say, like, it's like it could be, doesn't have to be the whole, some of the dialogue. It can be sort of the beginning of the dialogue, but just something to give us a sort of a sense of the issue, the particular concerns that you have, and all sort of, it could be sort of the first part of the conversation. So, happy to start that conversation.
Yeah, definitely appreciate that, and appreciate you joining us. I want to just ask if anyone else on the call has anything they'd like to add, comment, or question before Shane and Emily head out. Okay, not hearing from any. Then, of course, you're welcome to join us for the rest of our call. But just if you do drop off, we really appreciate your time here, very much so.
Well, Bob, we appreciate your invitation. Again, my information, even if I do depart, I think my information should remain in the chat. And then, Bob, you've got my contact information as well. So, yes. we're again, thank you for the invitation today. Great to meet all of you and to hear about what you're working on. And please think of us as a resource in your own work.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And
thank you for having us. Really appreciate it.
Okay, all right.
Yes. Thank you both.
Bye.
Thank you. Yes, and I know. Thanks, Josh. I see that you posted in the chat a link to a reference from Louisiana about pricing disparities caused by monopolies. So we'll take a look at that. And what I thought it might be helpful for us to do next is to talk. Oh, you're gonna head out, Sean? Josh, you're heading out?
Yeah, unless you need me for anything else here. Yeah.
Yeah,
were
I just
gonna-
before you run, Josh, I just like to put a plug in for Mass Broadband. So I sit on a digital equity working group that Josh's organization put together, and they worked really hard to pull in representation from not only across the state but different groups within the state to go deep as well as broad. And so I just want to use them to feed information up to. I mean, they put out surveys a month or so ago. That was the first step. These listening sessions are the second step. There's going to be focus groups. So please, access their websites, use that information. It's a really, the group is pretty impressive with the variety of people and organizations that are on it. So you can be sure that if you bubble stuff up to them, it's going to get heard. So anyway, just put that unsolicited.
Thanks for that. Just one of the things, one of the people that I was trying to get, organizations I was trying to get in touch with to see if they might be interested in joining this meeting tonight was one of the consultants that several of the members of this coalition have been using. CTC is a consultant for digital equity work, and they weren't able to make it this afternoon, but perhaps next month they might be able to join us. And what I was hoping to do there is see if they could share across not only the communities that are already working on digital equity efforts in this coalition, but the others who are not yet doing that kind of work, that maybe they could learn what's going on and hopefully spread the word about why they should be doing that kind of work in their community. So maybe next month we'll be able to have them on to talk about that.
Yeah, the Cape Cod Commission is using them as a consultant.
Wait, Josh, before you hop,
Okay.
you were going to give us an update on BEAD, and
Oh, yes, thank you.
maybe tell us what KPMG can do for us.
You still have time, Josh?
Yeah, sure. I can do like this. I'll do like the preview version. So basically what the update was going to be is the things that y'all should be thinking about is that we're going to have a public comment period, and it's probably going to be, I would say, like first, second week of November through first, second week of December. We haven't fully solidified everything yet, but that will be, so that is when we're going to release our draft plans. We anticipate, again, that I'm saying this is my estimation of that time frame. And what's going to be really important for you all to think about, I think for this group in particular, is to look at the outline of what the challenge process is inside the BEAD plan in particular, because the challenge process is the thing that is going to be sort of in a lot of ways the way that locations are made eligible to receive funding. And you should be aware that municipalities, state agencies, and nonprofits are the only entities that are able to submit challenges. So individuals are not able to submit challenges directly to NBI. We are thinking about ways to dance around that, but just like that's the NTIA rules. So know that. I would say more familiar y'all can be with the NTIA guidance around challenge process, the better prepared you all are going to be to participate in that as it sort of moves forward. And also the better prepared you'll be to make recommendations regarding your perspectives on any proposed challenge process, which we have not developed yet. We're in the process of doing so now. So I would say that's going to be really where the rubber meets the road and what y'all should be watching and thinking about as this work starts to really spin up. So that was really what I was going to say on that front, is just like that's, I would be thinking in that direction and starting to become familiar. And we do anticipate providing technical assistance regarding challenge process activities. We haven't fully determined what those are or when we're going to roll them out. But Carl, your point, it may or may not be KPMG, maybe another entity, maybe ourselves, but that's where we're going to probably be plugging in effort and energy, is helping prepare folks to engage around that public discourse. So.
Okay, thanks. So
I do got to run, but thanks everybody. It's good to see y'all. And I look forward to being back next time. Take care.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Bye now.
Thanks, Josh.
So that's a great, I was going to ask him if there, if you know, as he said, no individuals, of course, but municipalities can comment that perhaps whether it would be helpful for a group of communities to submit comments together, if that helped. Like, say, for example, the reason why I asked that question is because on the South Coast, we have several communities, including New Bedford, Dartmouth, who are on the call now, for Haven, and Mattapoisett and Westport, who may or may not join the group, but in looking at the prospect of a public-private partnership to develop broadband fiber network to the home. And you know, if that group was to submit comments collectively, you know, perhaps that would help. I'm not sure how that would, you know, be looked at, but go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, but the Cape Cod Commission is handling that on behalf of the Cape. So they're an official partner of NBI. They have hired CTC, and they're actually formulating their own challenge process. So independently of the NBI survey, the Cape Cod Commission conducted their own survey and is conducting their own testing procedures. So there's a two-stage testing procedure that they're implementing where, you know, the first they have a process to take a test, which you've all probably done, you know, the Ookla type thing over Wi-Fi and whatever. And then if there seems to be a problem, they will provide certain users with physical equipment in order to bypass things like Wi-Fi and connect directly into routers, and then do some hardwired long form testing. And this is all part of something that they're doing under contract to NBI, with NBI. I don't know if there's a similar organization for the South Coast, but I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you.
That's who's doing it for the 15 Cape towns. So.
Okay, so the Cape Cod Commission is just they're are they the equivalent of the planning agency? Is that the
a regional planning agency? Yes.
Okay, all right. So they're the equivalent.
Except they have actual authority.
Okay. Yeah, they do. They and regulatory authority. Yes, that is correct.
Do you, in your opinion, would that be someone from that group, if they were so willing, would they be good to consider as a future guest speaker for
Absolutely. They have been tremendously helpful to us, and they have spoken at our meetings multiple times. And I also wanted to throw in, so that the Tech Council kind of brokers this similar group that you've got here, and it's a peer sharing group. But the Tech Council itself, as you're probably aware, one of our missions is to bring make people aware of technology. So as an example, in July, we had a presentation from Open Cape. In December, we're having a presentation from Verizon, because there's a lot of new fixed wireless technologies. You know, you don't have to wire up everything all the time. That's not the only option. I'm talking to Comcast about having them present as well. So, you know, one of our roles in this is to bring the options to the membership, and again, kind of present it in an agnostic, or as an agnostic as possible way. So
okay, thank you for that. Yes, and just so people on the call know, I did reach out to Open Cape to see if they could join us for this meeting as well, and they have, because as Steve mentioned, they had this event going on this afternoon. They couldn't be here, but hopefully in another meeting we can get them to join us as well. So, you know, the other goal for this meeting and asking you to be here from Cape Cod Technology Council was to see if there's, so you've already explained a couple of things that might be helpful to us and how we can work together. You've given us some good ideas for future presenters and so on. And then we've talked a little bit about this concept of advocacy in the area of the antitrust thing. So I know you have your hand up, Gene. I'll let you go. But what my main question is, how can we work together? What ways do you see us being able to work together to help each other?
Well, there's two related groups. So there's the Tech Council itself, which has an infrastructure committee that, as I said, has been advocating on broadband issues in a variety of ways since the late 90s, when, of course, what we thought of as broadband is very different than what we think of as broadband today. But we also have, through the Infrastructure Committee, we've created a broadband resource group, which I think has some analogs to what you're doing here. And I think that's the more interesting thing to think about. So the purpose of the broadband resource group, it really had three goals. We were bringing together people on the Cape who had either applied for grants or were thinking about applying for grants for deployment of municipal broadband. And what we thought we would be able to do is, first of all, be a resource of knowledge. We have a member who ran the municipal broadband network in Concord, Massachusetts. So it's somebody who's done it. Most of the people we're working with are people who have a desire for broadband or interest in the issue. They may have some technical expertise, but they haven't run a network. They don't, there's some practicalities there, and we thought it would be useful to talk to somebody who really has been there and done that. The second thing that we were trying to do is bring the members together and recognize that they're a resource. So the people who have succeeded in obtaining a grant have a level of expertise. They know what to do to get a grant. And in fact, that's one of the things that happened is we had the group in Bourne, which had gotten a $250,000 grant, advised a group in Wellfleet, which then subsequently got a $200,000 grant to extend fiber to the outer Cape beaches, because that's a big issue. There's no cell service on the outer Cape beaches. People are worried about sharks. You can't call 911 if something happens. So, right. And then nicely, when Bourne was considering creating a cable and internet advisory committee, Wellfleet had already set one up, and the Wellfleet group helped advise our group. So it's sharing of best practices, peer resources, which I think is pretty much what this group is doing. And yes. Then the last thing, which I also think has a direct analog to what your group is doing, is we're trying to foster regionalization. We're trying to avoid duplication of effort. Not everybody needs to do every single thing.
Yes.
Yeah. To have people understanding where everybody is. And so far we've got people from Harwich, from Wellfleet, Bourne, Falmouth, and we're looking to bring in other towns as well. And so one of the things I was wondering is, does it make sense to bring some of our people into this group? Does it make sense to have a representative to this group? And it's something that I'm going to discuss at our next resource project meeting and see what people think, but I'd be open to, what people think here.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's intriguing. And so let me I'll just open it up to the people on the call here from this group to see what you think.
You're certainly all welcome.
Now, do you think that we should, right, anybody could attend any one of our meetings, but the concept of having, a representative versus, anyone that's interested in joining us, I guess that might be up to that group to decide. On the other, way to think, yeah. So I guess we kind of have our meetings haven't so far been set up on a specific night and time, because we've been trying to accommodate presenters who may be only available later in the afternoon as opposed to an evening meeting, and sometimes at certain dates. We tend to be like the last third or fourth week of the month, and we've been kind of gravitating towards Thursdays, but we don't have a set schedule yet. But we certainly could, we might in the future get to that point, and we certainly could accommodate possibly a shift in schedule to try and make sure this works. It sounds like this would be some interesting dynamics between our two groups for sure. Yeah, now, have any of the communities down your way been talking about public-private partnerships? I know that I think Falmouth had mentioned.
Falmouth has, yes.
Yeah, Falmouth has, but individually as Falmouth, not in a regionalization kind of a.
Right, we have not, we really haven't made, there's an interest in regionalization, but it hasn't really translated into any kind of organized effort at this point.
Okay, so as I mentioned, down our way, we've had this group that's had, a couple of meetings. We've talked a little bit about how we might, consider going about the process. And then New Bedford has kind of taken the lead in getting requests for information from, providers or interested parties in that partnership. And what the others in our group kind of decided is we would kind of take a back seat, wait and see how they make out, and then reconnect after they're a little further down the road. And again, trying not to have redundancy in what everyone's doing, and recognizing there's some costs associated or some resources certainly associated with trying to get there through procurement departments, et cetera. So would you be able to provide us, Jonathan, with an update on that process in New Bedford?
You're still muted, though it doesn't say it.
Not yet. There's still nothing here, but
I think he's going to log in again.
okay. Yeah, we'll give him a minute because I think that's to be an important update for us here. So you're back with us. Okay, we see you reconnected, Jonathan. We'll
hopefully
Hey, Bob,
hear
you
from
can hear me
you.
now?
Yes,
We
perfect.
can.
Ah,
Okay.
perfect. I got a new computer and it's been in a learning curve.
In an old network.
So I just want to mention, yeah, I just got back from vacation, but while I was on vacation, we did have the kickoff meeting with the CTC group. They were selected, I think I mentioned in the last meeting, through the RFP process to kind of start the build out process. From my understanding, they're looking at about a 12 to 16 month turnaround on it. So it's a little bit lengthier than I kind of just beginning, but yeah, the kickoff meeting happened, and the mayor of New Bedford is heavily involved in this, but not too many updates yet, but we are at least started the process.
Okay, so that what that process looks like is to qualify a partner on the private side to participate with the city.
Yeah, that's one of the avenues they're looking at. They're also looking at possibility of building out some sort of infrastructure, what would be needed from a city's perspective to bring in maybe a public-private partnership. I know the mayor of New Bedford kind of want to focus more so on underserved communities and the business community of New Bedford. Not sure if it's going to turn into residents or not, but I think that's what we're kind of looking at, what the cost is going to be involved, how can we procure the funding if necessary, and if really down the line is a public-private relationship make the most sense.
Right. Well, in our prior meeting when Josh Eichen joined us, and he mentioned, everyone's, all communities are clamoring, and interested in building out our own infrastructure, but it's just not practical for most communities probably. But and as Josh mentioned, there's a lot of money out there on the federal level. A limited amount will be coming to the state here, but his kind of suggestion was that if communities do what you're describing, Jonathan, and target putting infrastructure in that serves, that gets to underserved community areas, and you know, perhaps the commercial end of things too, you're addressing there, but now that same infrastructure could potentially be leveraged for a build out for a community-wide network. So, in a similar way in Fairhaven, I've described to the group before, we have a municipal fiber loop that runs through the town to all our public buildings. And the thought was that that could provide, as a backbone, could serve the rest of the community in a fiber to the home project. But the more build out that you do, for example, we have a housing authority project that we're working on in Fairhaven to build out through a grant to build out to our housing authority, and that would provide a little more infrastructure that could potentially be leveraged. So that was the concept there, that if you can really, do things like you're describing and at least tackle problem areas in a community, then that could potentially, help in the future. So I see your hand raised, Steve. Go ahead.
Yeah, Jonathan, do you know if there's a New Bedford representative in this MBI Digital Equity Working Group? I don't recall seeing anybody or hearing anybody, because we had a subgroup meeting this past Monday that got very heated, and it was all around access to public housing and older and smaller multi-dwelling units, and that's a huge focus for MBI. The incumbents, it was I actually got into a little bit of a discussion, I'll call it, with the cable lobbyist, but they're advocating very heavily for assistance, so funding to help both Verizon and Comcast go into some of these areas where there's asbestos, older buildings, lack of access, things like that. So that's high on the priority list. In fact, we have a follow-up meeting next Friday to kind of revisit that. But I just wanted to give you a heads up on that, and I'm not your representative, but I'll be happy to share information and stuff.
That'd be helpful. Yeah, I know from New Bedford's perspective, we are underserved in the sense that from a financial standpoint, from a speed standpoint, we are underserved. But everyone in the community does has internet and has access to internet. Is it good internet? Is it affordable? Is another question. But that's where I think when we first started this project, MBI was really focusing on the last mile and getting everyone connected, which New Bedford never had that issue. But I'm glad that's really good to hear, because that was where we've been coming from all along, that underserved, especially for a city like us, we have that issue all along. Yeah.
And that's what the focus was unserved MDUs in older city areas. So and again, it's kind of been identified as a problem area, even though New Bedford has multiple vendors and a lot of stuff in the streets, but is it in every, apparently there's a lot of buildings that just because they're older and they don't have multiple conduits, like if you've got one conduit used for something, they don't have, the other vendors don't have access to it. But anyway, I don't want to take too much time, but I just wanted to share that it was a hot topic on Monday and will be revisited next week. So
yeah, if I could,
thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. And, Sean Gross is, there's a consultant that's worked with the city for some time now, and he's mentioned in conversations we've had, and he's joined these calls in the past, that, the city has done a lot of work in, doing these speed tests. And they've actually, one of the things that I thought was really fantastic that they did was they reached out through the school department to try to get, them to help with kids that had, tablets at home. And given that, so much of the trials and tribulations that were experienced across the country during COVID were in the classroom, virtual classroom. That was a great, way to approach that. But what I wonder, Steve, in your, if you were able to send something in the form of an email over that would describe, what you're talking about with that group. And because one of the things that I talked to Sean about in the past is trying to, the gateway cities are I think, a great place to start with all these concerns. And New Bedford, we're fortunate to have New Bedford as a regular contributor to our meetings here. We have not been able to get anyone from Fall River in our area, and I know some of the cities, maybe if they had this message, if you're looking for. How many people are you looking for in this group, Steve? Is it,
Well,
just
so
looking-
I'm not, so MBI set up this digital equity working group, and it's got representatives, there's housing people in it. There's, I'm a Cape Cod regional person. There's other regional entities, but there's hospitals, there's people who represent the incarcerated communities, libraries, there's kind of people from a whole bunch of different backgrounds, and then again, then they broke up into some subgroups, and the subgroup that I was in is infrastructure, and there's a real concern about older, smaller, multi-dwelling units, and everybody acknowledges that they're in the cities. They're really not. Some of them are rural, but and just that these are unserved or significantly underserved areas, and they're looking for documentation on that. So I can send you what I can outline it, and I'll send it to
if you would, and if you wanted to, if Josh Eichen is more appropriately the person that we should be kind of coordinate that with through, if you wouldn't mind just kind of summarizing like that and linking Josh in, so we can perhaps perhaps we can get that word out to everyone who's on our listserv here, and then ask see if we can do maybe a more direct target to some of the cities that like Fall River, perhaps if New Bedford, Mayor Mitchell's office, perhaps reaching out to Fall River to try to encourage them to participate in these kind of efforts as well might be helpful.
Well, and also for, now again, MBI has kind of set these listening sessions up regionally, but I mean, I don't understand why they're doing something in Brockton and they're not doing something in New Bedford and Fall River. I mean, it just.
The listening session. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's going to be follow-on focus groups, which are going to drill down into like more specific areas and get more granular. And part of it is I don't think MBI, I mean, again, their hearts are in the right place, but they've always been more focused on the rural, unserved, great western part of the state, and not so much on the inner city stuff. And I just think they don't know what issues that we face. So like with the listening session that we're having on the Cape, I'm rounding, again, my role is to get as many people into that as I can, and MBI has asked for that. And then I'm also going to advocate and lobby for, there's the issues in Bourne are not the same issues on the Outer Cape, where they have shark problems and lack of cell phone service, right? And so they need multiple focus groups here to kind of really hear what the issues are. I don't think they really understand them and know them. And frankly, one whatever region it is, listening session in Brockton is I think it's inadequate when you have New Bedford, Fall River, and the whole South Coast in there that are all somewhat different, right? So and
maybe they'll expand on that. I think it's only the first one that's coming up, and I committed to be there myself. Josh had reached out to me earlier today about that, so I'll be participating in that and see. But maybe there's an opportunity for others down the road to be more South Coast based. And all right, great.
It's okay. The Boston one they're having on a Saturday morning, so they'll get no one.
Oh, interesting.
10:30.
Wow. Okay.
Can I ask Steve a quick question? It's Tom Newton. Sorry, Steve. When you mentioned the lobbyist was you kind of butted heads. I'll put it politely, but was that Tim Wilkerson by chance from the NECTA?
Yes, it was.
So I sort of threw this caution out to the group when we first started meeting. I have a real concern about the fact that they're even involved in this. And that, so for anybody that doesn't know, the NECTA used to be the New England Cable Television Association. They've rebranded themselves as the New England Communications and Technology Association, but I can attest that they're two probably their two only clients are Comcast and Spectrum at this point.
Well, and Verizon.
Verizon too. So you can bet your last dollar that they're going to go after as much BEAD money as possible. And so this sort of dovetails with Gene's point before, that we really need all of the towns in Massachusetts, no matter the differences and your definition of what's underserved. We all need to make sure that we're in lockstep going forward and get as much of that BEAD money as we can, because if we don't, you can bet that the NECTA will, and that money's just going to go right back into Comcast, Verizon, and Spectrum's pocket. And we all know that, you know, they're the lion in the arena, very hard to beat, right? So we just need to have our act together.
Well, one of the issues I had at this meeting on Monday, and I, you know, I don't want to get on a soapbox, but Tom, we're completely aligned on this, because you know, Comcast is making a boatload of money. So is Verizon. And if they can't go into an MDU where there's multiple customers,
correct,
with their own profits and their own investments, I mean, why do they need government money? I understand why running 4 miles of fiber to 3 homes is not cost effective.
Right, homes per mile, right.
But you know, they're complaining about not being able to get into multi-dwelling units.
They've done it for years.
I mean, I was just like, the steam was coming out of my ears. And I agree with you.
Yeah.
I don't think Tim should be in this group either, but he
totally
is.
Agree.
And you know, there's a lot of ties between Tim used to be in MBI. You know, there's a lot of ties between he and this group and these people, and they all kind of move in and out of various government roles and whatnot. You know, so they all know one another. They're all very friendly, and yes, I think they're overrepresented for sure. So
are you, when you say this group, Steve, you're referring to the group that MBI put together for the
well, MBI, so MBI, all, you know, like Tim was in MBI at one point, you know, of his career, and some of the people who are in MBI now they've all worked together in various government.
Right, but he's now he's in the digital equity working group you're referring to.
Yes, he
is. I see. Okay, so you know, this, I wonder if this was just a concept, and I'll throw it out there, but if someone in one of our groups, you know, that are on this call right now, was to write almost like an op-ed article or something like that describes what you just talked about, Steve. It's, you know, hey, you know, this is, you know, all these funds that are going to be available through the state are going to either go into the hands of an incumbent provider, or they're going to go into the hands of the communities who advocate for these funds. And it's really important, as you described, really important for communities to you know, be aware and you know, go through the right steps to make sure that they are the ones that get the funding. You know, is that something, you know, we have the Institute for Local Reliance, am I saying that right? ISLR, I think it is. We've had them join our call in the past, and they do a lot of advocacy work in the area of broadband, and they you know, they publish things that, you know, on the internet in this area. They might be a resource that might.
And Sean Gonzalez, who runs that, he's on Open Cape's board, by the way.
Yes, and he's attended our meetings in the past, and he, you know, I'm just wondering if this is a topic that perhaps he might be willing to write about, and then that could be kind of disseminated through our groups to people to get the word out.
And there's another group that the Bourne folks have brought into our circle, which I will, it's an organization called the Education Superhighway. They're a private not-for-profit organization, and they have been very helpful in providing us resources, and they've actually hosted a bunch of their own meetings to kind of guide us and this group. And I will get you their contact information as well. So
yeah, that, I think, if I'm not mistaken, when I spoke with Sean Gross, again, the consultant that the city of New Bedford's been working with, I think he mentioned that organization too. It's a national organization, or
yes,
is it?
I believe it is. I'm new to this regulatory government side of things. So,
okay.
You know.
Okay. All right. Excellent. So, and Tom, thanks for you know, speaking up on that. That's it's really something important you brought to light here for the group.
I've been trying to keep a low profile and be polite in these meetings, so I'm just.
You're
doesn't
you're
help.
amongst friends.
So, the earlier discussion, I just want to circle back to that for a minute. Heidi Mahoney jumped off the call, but that discussion about the legislation on the Make Ready legislation, is that something that the Cape Cod Technology Council is familiar with, and have you been?
Short answer, no. And it's something that we might take a look at. The way the Tech Council operates in terms of advocacy is when there's a proposal or an idea that, whether we get a request from a member or from anyone else to take a position, we run that through the infrastructure committee, which I chair. And then if there's a consensus among the infrastructure committee that this is something we're interested in, then we forward it to the board with a recommendation. So it would be, I have to confess, I had not heard of this legislation until this afternoon. So I have no idea whether there'd be an appetite to support it or not.
Okay, and we've had, our meetings have been, each meeting, it tends to be, different people that show up except for a kind of a core group here. So it's hard to, gauge across everyone that's participated in the past. If you look at our member list on the website, it's kind of, it covers everyone who has participated over time in the meetings, but, so, and we're a little less formal than you guys. I would say a lot less formal. It's kind of just we set up meetings and we just talk about the issues, and the agendas. Anybody that has an idea of what they want to talk about, we put it on the agenda. But yeah, we did in our prior meeting that there was a consensus that we should write as the Mass Broadband Coalition, write letters to legislators, local legislators about this. And so, Heidi helped us with the draft language on that. And I think that may be what she sent you earlier. I didn't catch in the chat exactly what she sent, but if she didn't, I can forward to you what we had drafted as.
Well, there's a number of things there, and I've been in the meeting, so I haven't had a chance to.
Right.
Right. I copied them, Gene. But Gene, would this be? I mean, should we ask them to present this to the infrastructure committee for consideration?
I think that would be a good idea.
Okay.
We could have it in our September meeting. I don't think we have anything on the agenda for that.
We don't, not to my knowledge. So we meet the third Wednesday of every month. It's a Wednesday morning from 9 to 10.
Okay, and if she did not send over the sample letters that that we were basically planning on just adopting and submitting, that, then I'd be glad to do that. Yeah. Now I think we've kind of gone through everything that I had seen and expressed to the members that we'd talk about today. But I'd like to just see if anybody who's remaining on the call, I know a couple of people have dropped off. Anybody left would like to talk about anything in particular here.
So just for context, Gene and Steve, the One Touch Make Ready, several meetings ago, I think now, we had a gentleman from Coleraine on the call, which is a small hill town. I guess it's like Western Franklin County. And they did one of these MBI programs where they had no internet and used MBI funding to actually build it out. And their major impediment to success was that the incumbent, who refused to wire the town, put all kinds of roadblocks in front of them, delaying their ability to attach to the existing poles. And so that's one of the things that this legislation is meant to address, and to streamline that process so that utilities can't kind of make up new processes on the fly to inhibit municipalities.
And that relates to the sort of antitrust considerations and monopoly considerations, because there are cases, I'm not aware of this happening in Massachusetts, but there are cases where the incumbent providers in other states, I believe Pennsylvania may be one of them, have lobbied for legislation that would restrict the ability of municipalities to create their own broadband networks, or, and this is maybe the case in Massachusetts, and this relates to the challenge process, overstate what they're providing in order to make it more difficult for money to be available for alternatives. So,
Oh, for sure. You know, when we started looking into this, we invited both Comcast and Verizon to, talk to us just so we could understand Comcast kind of declined to talk about it strategically. Verizon came in and said, oh, there's all of this federal money you can access. How much of it will you pay us in order to have us have better equipment so we can charge more money?
Yeah.
It just.
So just as we speak here, I went to look something up here, and I see in my inbox already from Heidi Mahoney, who spoke to us earlier. She wrote an email to Josh Eichen and Shane Blundell from the AG's office with a summary of the One Touch Make Ready and a whole series of attachments, including model support letters. So I'm going to forward that to you both, and you'll have her contact information if you'd like to set something up with her in terms of your future meeting with your
that would be good.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll do that shortly. And I did see that that's why I invited her to this meeting. She attended our meetings in the past, but I invited her specifically because of that conversation on the antitrust, because I thought this seemed like, as you said, there's a relation there to this and these hurdles that are presented that stand in front of communities trying to do work, or even not necessarily communities in some aspects, and then other competitors that want to get into the space. So all right, great.
Well, Bob, thank you for inviting me, but I'm going to have to drop off. It's my wife's birthday, so I sort of have a hard stop.
Don't want to get in the way of that, and I think we're actually rounding out the meeting here as well shortly, so you won't miss much. But thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for the invitation.
I end up doing everything Gene comes up with anyway, so you got the more important guy. He has a good idea, and I get to do it. So
all right.
Take care, folks.
Okay, thank you.
You too.
All right. Anybody else with any other comments or questions before we drop off tonight?
I just wanted to throw out there, and you may know this already. One of the best presentations we got in our resource group was from, and I can't remember her name, but I can dig it up for you if you like. In Shutesbury, they did a municipal fiber network, and she gave us the soup to nuts story of, and yeah, she had some of the same issues. She had a nice PowerPoint presentation. You could tell she's done this before, but she was really, really enlightening and helpful. And it was interesting to me when the MBI surveys came out, Shutesbury had 100% participation in the survey responses. So it was the only community in the state, right? It was just
Yes. I think Gail, she presented to us in Fairhaven as well. Good. As we were talking about, municipal light plant and building out fiber to the home. She was very, very excellent presenter and answered a lot of questions for us. Yeah. Thank you. So, okay. Anybody with any other comments or questions?
So one question for you, Jonathan. The RFP that you selected CTC from, is that still out on your website? Is there a way I can get a copy of that?
Bob, I'm not sure if he wants to just send it out. It is public information, so
Yeah.
that's perfectly fine, Bob, if you're okay with that.
Okay, sure. I will forward that to you. That he did send that to me. And as we talked about it with our local group here again with New Bedford, Dartmouth, Fairhaven, Mattapoisett, and Westport. So I've circulated that group, but I will send that over. I don't know if it makes sense to just send it out to the regular, the whole distribution, because people won't have the context, but I will send it to you, Carl.
Thank you.
yeah.
We're in the process of putting together an RFP that sounds somewhat similar. We're framing it as a business plan.
That's pretty much how we framed it too, more or less.
Okay.
Okay, right.
I'd
Great.
love to read it. Thanks.
Excellent. Yeah, well, that's one of the benefits of this group being together like this. So we will we'll get that over to you. Go ahead, Steve.
So Falmouth's plan. So they did a study. They hired a consultant, and their plan is published on their website as well. And it's a couple of 300 pages, but if you just read the executive summary, it's really, really enlightening and very helpful. So I just wanted to make you aware of that if you weren't already.
Okay. Well.
Okay. Excellent. Is that the Falmouth Net? Is that their
Yes.
website? Yeah, Falmouth Net. Okay. Excellent. All right. Well, it sounds like we're okay to close this one out. And like I said, next month we can hopefully we'll have someone from Open Cape representing or presenting to us and answering questions, perhaps CTC, and then we'll see what else develops in terms of other people that might be invited. And if anyone else has any ideas, again, just send them over to me and we'll try and coordinate that. So thanks again, everyone. Appreciate it. And we'll be in touch.
Thank you,
Next-
Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
All right. Bye now.
Bye-bye.